Are you a new GM or even an experienced one that's struggling to make your encounters more interesting? I feel that the biggest sin of any encounter design is placing your characters and their opponents in an empty room. So by using environmental hazards, you'll never commit this sin ever again, and your players are going to have more fun too. Today, I'm going to discuss my top 5 easy to implement hazards to include in almost any encounter design. Today on Fat Dragon Adventure. Fat Dragon Adventure is your go-to for all things Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop role-playing games. Want to dive deeper? Subscribe now and consider joining our Patreon page to become a Dragon Rider. I think hazards add a layer of unpredictability and excitement to any adventure. They prevent your game from becoming too stale or too easy. I also think a well-placed hazard can jolt your players out of their comfort zone and keep them on their toes, too. Water hazards is one of the most straightforward environmental hazards to incorporate into any encounter, in my opinion. Whether it's a river, a lake, a waterfall, or whatever, water offers a variety of options to reshape your encounters. So how much mileage can you get out of a water hazard? Well, characters without a swim speed typically find water to be a difficult terrain, for example, doubling their movement cost. And if you add a waterfall, it can provide partial cover or total cover from range attacks. And I think swift rivers might necessitate an athletics check or be swept across or away from the river. Let's take a look at this example. I think it demonstrates the real impact of water. Consider placing a group of goblins with bows on the opposite side of a fast-moving river. Now, the party's melee characters will immediately face a dilemma, and for added deviousness, provide those goblins with some sort of cover, like from trees. This will grant them a bonus to their armor class, making them that much more difficult to hit. So you can see that just by adding this one simple element of water, for example, how much more challenging your encounters have become. Another classic environmental hazard is the simple pit trap. Pit traps are particularly well suited for low-level encounters, in my opinion. So opponents like bandits, goblins, kobolds, they often employ these devices when battling on their home turf. And I think pit traps can introduce a surprise element, transforming a seemingly straightforward encounter into a potentially dangerous situation. Just remember that passive perception only applies within 5 feet of the character, so characters with a high passive perception will need to be moving across the battlefield carefully to spot these types of dangers. If they're rushing as a group, they could end up falling into one of these traps, for example. In that situation where the group is moving quickly through an area with a trap, I will have all of the players roll a 1d6, and anyone that rolls a 1 sets off a pit trap nearby them and suffers the consequences of the trap. I like to let the dice gods decide who gets hurt and who doesn't. Another one of my favorites is the falling net trap. While these are less effective than pit traps, they're also less anticipated. This hazard is particularly effective against characters with a low strength score, like a wizard, for example. This trap will require an athletics check to escape, of course, and a smart player will soon discover that a net can be physically attacked with slashing weapons or fire to defeat it. While basic nets can be easily overcome with repeated encounters, you as a dungeon master can increase the challenge of them by using steel nets that can't be cut, or magic nets that can shock the players, or even razor-sharp nets lined with blades to inflict additional damage. So you can see, falling nets can be a devious hazard if you really set your mind to it. What about magic? Surely there's a sneaky little wizard out there that's using a magic trap to protect their lair, right? I would think so. One of my favorite magical traps are elemental statues that emit a burst of energy like lightning or fire, for example. And while these traps are usually triggered by pressure plates, they can also be detected with a high enough passive perception check, in my opinion. Also, if you have a spellcaster with you, they can reveal them by using a detect magic spell. In essence, this is another hazard that can reward players for intelligent and cautious play. However, if your players are sloppy or rushed in their exploration tactics, they can result in deadly consequences for sure. And this is also, I think, a reminder to everyone that everything is really not as it appears sometimes in a dungeon. The point here is that magical statues offer a great opportunity for magic using party members to contribute to the exploration by recognizing and disabling such hazards. After all, why leave all the trap finding glory to the rogues, right? Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. God, I love Shakespeare sometimes. This next little gem I found in the D&D 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide. You know, that book that most GMs never even bother to read. It's a good book. You should check it out. For larger combats like sieges of castles, incorporating the medieval terror of boiling oil or an acid-like equivalent is one of my favorite choices for sure. These substances can be triggered like falling nets or poured onto an unsuspecting party member by a hidden enemy. Either way, once a character has been doused with one of these substances, they will endure reoccurring damage at the start of each of their turns until they take some time to actually deal with the problem. This creates a challenging decision for players. Either lose your turn or risk taking additional damage, right? When I employ this trap also as a GM, I like to include a nearby water source like a river or a well so that the players, in essence, can negate the effects quickly if they choose to. After all, I'm not completely heartless as a DM. So no matter what game system you're running, the important thing here is when creating an encounter is to let your imagination run wild. Other than these 5 traps, I think you could also employ things like collapsing roofs, which I love by the way, poison darts and needles, lava, giant rolling spheres like in Indiana Jones, or whatever you can think up. The point here is to make your environment exciting for your players because empty rooms suck all the fun out of the encounter. I want my players focused on the encounter and not on their phones. So by adding the simple yet versatile threat of water to the more complex and dangerous pit traps and magical statues, there are countless ways to use environmental hazards to up your game. The goal here is to reward intelligent play, create opportunities for social interactions, and also to enhance the overall gaming experience at the table for you and all of your players. But that's how I do it. What are some clever traps you've employed in encounter design? I'm always on the lookout for great trap ideas, and I think most people are too. Also, how do you feel about using hazards in your encounter design? Do you find it makes your encounters more dynamic? If you have any other thoughts, leave them in the comments below. I'd like to hear from you guys. If you enjoyed this video, and you can support this channel by becoming a Dragon Rider, then please check out our Patreon page. The link is down in the doobly-doo for you. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so you never miss our next episode. Until then, ride that fat dragon. And thanks for watching. See you next time on Fat Dragon Adventure.